Hi everyone, Dead Battery here, and thank you for joining me on my channel. Today's video is going to be another computer build. This is for my husband who is going back to school. So no judgment. We really needed to build this computer because the one we had was not working for the classes he was taking. My husband decided to go back to school for web and video design. And the two he's got coming up are VR and augmented reality. So at the moment, he's kind of using one of my extra laptops. It's just not really working out. They're working, but some of the programs just are not loading properly or running kind of slow. So he thought it'd be a fun idea to build a computer to the specs that a lot of these classes are going to need so that he can learn how to use all these programs for future endeavors. He says that his goal is to focus on 3D, but he really does want to build his own 8-bit games, which I think would be pretty awesome. But he also said VR and augmented reality. So he spent some time looking up the different specs that he would need for the different classes, programs, and he kind of came up with a list that said, don't go below this specification with stuff. So we decided to go to the computer store and pick out some stuff. Unfortunately, there are only 2 computer stores around us. We do not have Micro Center. We do not have Best Buy. We just kind of have local stores. And we did the best we could. So no judgment, but I'm going to show you how we put it together and what we ultimately came up with. So here's the motherboard we picked out. It's called the Pro Z890P Wi-Fi. The board does offer one-click overclock on the processor and the memory. We haven't gotten that far yet, and at the moment I don't think it is needed, but it's nice to know that he picked something out that we can eventually overclock for anything he may need it for. And this also comes with Click BIOS X, which we'll see later. And it's supposed to be user-friendly for anybody who possibly is new to it, as well as advanced. So there are 2 settings with it. It seems like it has a lot of really good features, and I think eventually we will be able to figure them out. The CPU we went with was Intel Core Ultra 7. It's a 265K. It's got 30M cache and up to 550 gigahertz. Now, what that means to me, I don't really know, but I know that he did his research to look into what he should get or around what he needed. Unfortunately, the stores we went to did not have many selections of Intel at this time, but we didn't have many options, and this ended up being the best option. Next, we're going to put the CPU heatsink on, and this one's called the MAG Core Frozr AA13, and he got it in white. The back plate for support had sticky tape on it, so I just peeled it off, lined it up, and put it on the back. And I wasn't really paying attention when we went to put it on, so I had the separate brackets and I was trying to line them up and I couldn't figure out why they weren't lining up. I was like, oh no, we got the wrong size. And then I looked and realized that the heatsink itself already had 2 brackets attached to it. So I was just holding it over top to make sure that everything lined up, and they did. Then there's a plastic protector on the bottom, and once you take that off, it's got thermal paste already on it. So once it's lined up, then I went on each of the sides to tighten it little by little so that it was all the way attached to the CPU. And this one seemed to have good reviews for people who were playing big gaming sessions. So we figured it would be really good for anything he would be doing with his schoolwork. Next, we're going to put one of the M.2 memory sticks in, and we went with the Samsung. Unfortunately, they didn't have the 1 terabyte in stock, so we ended up going with the 2 terabyte, and this M.2 already had a shield over it. It's called a Shield Frozr 2, and it's a tool-free solution for keeping the M.2 protected. I did not see him take it off, so I did not see how it was attached. Once we got the SSD in place, I had a lot of difficulty figuring out how it went down. And this one wouldn't sit right, and it had this plastic piece, and it took me a bit of going back and forth, and we thought we had it down in place, but then when you push down on the shield, it didn't sit properly and it was really loose. So it took a bit, but that plastic piece that's around the screw, it has a cutout on one side, so you basically push it to one side to put the M.2 SSD down, turn it back to hold it in place, and then this shield goes over top and it kind of snaps onto the top of it. Now we're gonna put the RAM in. We got the XPG Lancer DDR5 and they are RGB. We probably do not need all 4 right now, but it was good to have, and it's good for him to mess around with and figure out how to use it. It does say that these have overclocking capabilities. Now, I don't know how that works with the CPU also having overclocking capabilities, but I'm sure eventually we will figure this all out. Now that we have the motherboard built, we're going to go ahead and put it in the case. It's an NZXT case. There were these standoffs or something that the motherboard came with. I'm not too sure what they were. The tops of them kind of pushed down and they were all separately bagged. We couldn't figure it out, so we did not use them. If you know what they are, let me know. The motherboard itself was not heavy with everything and it fit into the case really nicely. Now that it's in the case, we can put the fan on the CPU heatsink, and we were trying to decide if we wanted it to push cool air in or pull hot air out. We went with pushing cool air in, and eventually, if it's needed, we can also put a fan on the other side. So now on to the GPU, and the GPU that my husband went with was a GeForce RTX 5060 Ventus 2X. And then previously my husband had bought this vertical GPU mounting kit and he really liked the look of it. It is nice, but you'll see later on we did run into some issues with it. So basically how this works is you slide the GPU on first and then you plug it in and then it goes where it would normally go, but it faces front. I think it looks really neat. I don't know if I would have thought to get this, but I know that he was excited about it, so we were going to use it. Now on to the fans, and we did buy new fans, but we also had a whole bunch at home. So for the front fans, we went with NZXT since that is what the case is, and they were the F120 RGB Duo, and it came with an RGB box for control. So he thought that was pretty neat. And new fans are always really difficult to get in place because you're the ones actually making the threads in them. Now we're gonna put 3 fans at the top for exhaust, and I think these fans were also NZXT. They were ones we already had, but we just hadn't used them yet. And they're not RGB. And lastly, we had one extra for the exhaust in the back, and I think that one is an RGB. We also bought 2 more SSDs, and one was a 1 terabyte and the other one was a 2 terabyte. And I know it's probably a little excessive, but he was basically thinking this is going to be easiest to store his projects, and also if I needed to use it, I could add my own SSD to it and just keep my stuff separate from his. But at the moment he's putting in what he may need just to be safe. Now on to the power supply, and we went with NZXT again. It's the C1000 Gold. I really like the bag that all the cords came in. We're definitely going to keep that to put anything extra. And then here goes the fun part of going back and forth, getting all the cords through, figuring out where we want them all to go. So we basically just each sat on a side. I passed him what the cords were. He decided where he wanted them to go through. And if he wasn't able to get his fingers in there, then that's where I came around and get some of the smaller plugs in place. It was fun building this with him because it was neat just to work together and help each other out. Now, remember how I mentioned that the GPU being vertical and being difficult to get into place was going to kind of be an issue? Well, basically what happened was because it's a vertical, it blocks all of the rest of the plugs or areas that we need on the motherboard, to include the power for the GPU. So we eventually just took it out, looked at everything we could find there to get everything fit through and plugged in. But eventually we got it all figured out so that we can test it and make sure that it turns on. So here it is turned on. It looks like all the fans are working. We got the cool lights going right now. I'm sure my husband will change up the colors later on. At first, the BIOS screen came up and it was too large for the screen and we could not figure out how to get it smaller. I kept looking up like BIOS screen too large, and there were a lot of people stating that you needed to go in as admin, type this code in to change it, and I was thinking this can't be correct because anybody turning this on for the first time, that seems kind of odd that the initial thing would be to dig to find how to make the screen smaller. But eventually, I'm not too sure what we did, save something, and then it eventually realized that it was too large and reset itself to fit the screen we had up. So unfortunately, the only operating system I had was Windows 10, and I know that support for Windows 10 is going away, and I basically had it for any of the old computers that I was working on for donation. So we don't have Windows 11, which means I need to go through the process of getting the operating system and then installing it on the computer so he could actually start uploading programs and getting his school going on it. In the end, this was really fun. I did enjoy building another computer with my husband, and I'm hoping that this one does a lot better than what he was using. I did feel really bad when he was just frustrated with days on end because a program was taking too long to load or it wasn't working properly, and he was worried about falling behind on assignments. So it's nice that we're going to have something that he can work on and he can get better at doing something he really enjoys. I'm excited to see what 8-bit games he builds for me to play. Let me know in the comments what you think of our build. Remember, this is a judgment-free zone. There's no need to get angry or rude about anything. We are still learning about all computer stuff, so I'm sure there's something that we did too much of or not enough of, but in the end it works. It's gonna work for what we need it for, and it's all a learning curve, and this will give us an idea for future builds we may do. Thank you for watching, and as always, if you like this video, please like and subscribe, share with your friends, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks. Bye!